The sound of shattering crystal silenced the entire dining room. 20 pairs of eyes turned toward me as I stood there, my hands still trembling from slamming the wine glass down on that polished mahogany table. My sister Victoria's mouth hung open in shock, her perfectly lipsticked smile frozen mid-sentence. She had just told me in front of our entire family and their distinguished guests on Christmas Eve that I didn't deserve to carry the Sterling name, that I should change my last name because I was nothing but a burden. Pathetic. Worthless. But if you enjoyed seeing someone finally stand up for themselves, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below telling me what you would have done in my situation. Your support means everything. Now let me take you back to where this nightmare really began, 2 days before that explosive Christmas dinner. I had spent 3 months preparing for the Sterling Foundation's annual charity gala. 3 months of late nights, countless emails coordinating with vendors, securing sponsors, writing and rewriting the keynote speech that would announce our largest donation yet to underprivileged youth programs. This was my project, my baby, the one thing I had poured my heart into while working quietly in the shadows of my family's massive corporate empire. The ballroom of the Plaza Hotel glittered with chandeliers and the kind of old money that doesn't need to announce itself. I stood backstage in my simple white dress, the nicest thing I owned, clutching my note cards with sweaty palms. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was my moment. For once, I wouldn't be invisible. Ellie, the forgettable middle daughter who handled the paperwork while Victoria collected the glory. I was adjusting my microphone when I saw her. Victoria swept into the backstage area like a hurricane in couture, her emerald gown probably worth more than my yearly salary. She didn't even look at me as she passed, but her shoulder connected with a waiter carrying a tray of red wine. The collision seemed almost choreographed, perfectly timed. The glass tumbled through the air in slow motion, and then suddenly my white dress was drowning in burgundy liquid. The cold wine soaked through to my skin. I gasped, looking down at the spreading stain that covered me from chest to hem. My carefully chosen outfit, my confidence, everything was ruined in an instant. Victoria turned her hand flying to her mouth in mock horror, but her eyes, those cold blue eyes we shared, sparkled with satisfaction. "Oh my God, Ellie! How clumsy!" Her voice carried just loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. Then she leaned in close, her perfume suffocating her whisper like poison in my ear. "Cheap things belong in the kitchen, not trying to play swan." Before I could respond, before I could even process what had happened, Victoria plucked the microphone from my collar and the note cards from my hands. "Don't worry, little sister, I'll handle this. You go get cleaned up." I stood there frozen, watching her glide onto that stage, watching her deliver my speech word for word. She must have stolen it from my computer, I realized with growing horror. Every joke I had crafted, every heartfelt appeal, every statistic I had researched, poured from her mouth as the audience hung on her every word. My parents sat in the front row, my father's chest puffed with pride, my mother dabbing at her eyes with a silk handkerchief. Nobody looked for me. Nobody wondered where I had gone. I spent the rest of the evening in a bathroom stall, scrubbing uselessly at the wine stains, listening to the applause that should have been mine echoing through the walls. That night, I drove home in my beat-up Honda Civic, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly, my knuckles turned white. My phone buzzed with a message from Victoria. "By the way, park at the servants' entrance on Christmas. We have important guests coming, and your rust bucket is an eyesore." I should have turned the car around right then. I should have kept driving and never looked back. But my grandfather's voice echoed in my memory from when I was a little girl, the only person in that family who ever truly saw me. "Patience, Ellie. Patience and observation will teach you more than confrontation ever could." So I went home to my tiny apartment in Queens, so different from the family's Connecticut estate, and I made my decision. This would be the last time. The very last time I would let them treat me like I was nothing. The next morning, I began making phone calls. I had spent 5 years working in the family business, quietly competently handling the financial details that no one else wanted to bother with. I knew where every dollar went. I knew which accounts held what, who signed which checks. And most importantly, I knew exactly what my sister had been doing with the Sterling Foundation's money. Christmas Eve arrived with heavy snow, blanketing the Connecticut countryside. I loaded my car with the one gift I had painstakingly created for my grandfather, a restored photo album documenting our family's history that I had spent months researching and assembling. Then I added a manila folder containing bank statements, wire transfer records, and receipts, evidence of Victoria's theft of over $500,000 from our family's charitable foundation money that was supposed to help children in need, but instead had paid for her designer wardrobe and her married boyfriend's gambling debts. The Sterling estate loomed before me like something out of a Gothic novel, all stone and towering windows wreathed in Christmas lights that somehow made it look colder rather than warmer. I pulled around to the back entrance as instructed, parking next to the catering vans, and I sat there for a long moment, breathing in the cold air, steeling myself. This was it. The last time I would bow my head and accept their contempt. I walked through the servants' entrance into the kitchen, where staff rushed around, preparing the elaborate Christmas dinner. My mother appeared almost immediately, not to greet me, but to thrust a serving tray into my hands. She didn't even say hello. Start passing these around to the guests in the drawing room. Victoria is entertaining some very important potential investors, and we need everything to be perfect. She looked me up and down with barely concealed disappointment. Try not to spill anything. I took the tray without a word, my face a careful mask of compliance. Inside, something hard and cold was settling into place where my heart used to be. I moved through the drawing room like a ghost, offering champagne to people who didn't see me, listening to Victoria hold court with my ideas, my business proposals, my strategies that she had stolen from my files and presented as her own. My grandfather sat in his wingback chair by the fireplace, watching everything with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. He caught my gaze and gave me the smallest nod. He knew. He had always known. When I returned to the main hall, I carefully set down my serving tray and retrieved my gift from where I had hidden it by the coat rack. The restored photo album was wrapped in simple brown paper and tied with twine, nothing fancy, but made with love. I carried it toward my grandfather, ready to present it to him before dinner. Victoria intercepted me halfway across the room. She had been holding court with a group of business associates, her laugh too loud, her gestures too grand. She saw what I was carrying, and something malicious flickered across her face. "What do we have here?" She snatched the package from my hands before I could stop her. "A little gift from Ellie. How precious." "Give it back, Victoria." My voice was steady but low. "Let's see what you've put together this time." Another sad attempt to buy affection. She tore at the wrapping paper, revealing the leather-bound album underneath. For just a moment, something that might have been genuine emotion crossed her face as she flipped through the restored photographs, the carefully researched family history, the hours of work evident on every page. Then she turned toward the fireplace. "Victoria, don't." She looked back at me with a smile that would haunt my nightmares. "You know what, Ellie, grandfather doesn't need sentimental garbage cluttering up his study. He needs a successor who understands business, not some pathetic little girl playing with scrapbooks." She threw the album into the fire. I lunged forward, but it was too late. The flames caught the dried paper and leather, consuming months of work in seconds. I watched my gift, my love, my effort turn to ash. "You'll regret that." The words came out of me cold and hard. Victoria threw her head back and laughed. "What are you going to do, Ellie? Run crying to Mommy?" She turned to her audience of investors, including them in the joke. "My little sister thinks she's so special, but look at her. She's nothing but a glorified assistant who can't even dress properly for a family dinner." The investors laughed uncomfortably. My father watched with a slight frown, but he didn't defend me. My mother had already turned away, more concerned with directing the household staff. Only my grandfather remained still, his expression unreadable. That was when I knew. This wasn't just about the album or the dress or the stolen speech. This was about 27 years of being treated like I was less than human. 27 years of having my accomplishments stolen, My efforts dismissed my very existence, treated as an inconvenience to be managed. Dinner was announced, and we all filed into the formal dining room. The tables stretched beneath glittering chandeliers set with china, so old and valuable that I used to be terrified of breaking it as a child. I took my assigned seat near the middle, neither honored nor completely excluded, just invisible enough to forget about. My grandfather sat at the head of the table like an ancient king, silent and observing. My father held court to his right, discussing market trends with the investors. My mother played the perfect hostess, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. And Victoria shone like the star she believed herself to be, commanding attention, telling stories, making everyone laugh. The first course arrived, and with it the first barb. "So Ellie," my father said, his voice carrying down the table, "I heard from Robert at the office that you've been having some difficulties with the Castellano account." I looked up sharply. "That's not true. The Castellano account is ahead of schedule and under budget." Victoria dabbed at her mouth with her napkin, all innocence. "Oh, Daddy must be confused. I'm actually the one managing the Castellano account now." Ellie was struggling with the complexity, so I took over. The clients specifically requested someone with more experience. The lie was so smooth, so confident, that several people around the table nodded approvingly. "That's completely false." I kept my voice level. "I've been managing that account for 8 months. Victoria hasn't touched it." My mother sighed dramatically. "Ellie, dear, don't be defensive. It's unbecoming. Your sister is just trying to help you by lying. See, this is exactly the problem." Victoria leaned back in her chair, addressing the table at large. "Ellie has always been so sensitive, so unable to accept constructive criticism or acknowledge when she needs help. It's been a real challenge for the family business." My father nodded gravely. "Perhaps we need to reconsider Ellie's position in the company. If she can't handle the pressure, maybe she should focus on something more suited to her abilities," my mother added, "something less demanding." The conversation continued like that through the second course and into the third. Little cuts, small humiliations, each one designed to diminish me in front of these important guests, to establish the narrative that I was incompetent, emotional, unsuited for the Sterling legacy. I ate mechanically, barely tasting the expensive food, feeling the familiar numbness settling over me. This was how it had always been. This was how it would always be if I didn't do something. Then Victoria stood raising her wine glass, her face flushed with alcohol and triumph. The table fell silent. She looked directly at me with those cold, calculating eyes. "I think we need to be honest here, as a family. It's Christmas after all, and honesty is important." She paused for effect, her smile sharpening. "Ellie, you don't deserve to carry the Sterling name. You're mediocre at best, a burden at worst. You're weak, you're forgettable, and frankly, you embarrass us. Maybe you should consider changing your name. Find some other family to disappoint." The silence that followed was absolute. Someone's fork clinked against their plate. My mother looked uncomfortable but said nothing. My father studied his wine. The investors stared at their plates, embarrassed to witness this family drama. And something inside me, something that had been bending and bending for 27 years, finally snapped. I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. Then I picked up my wine glass and slammed it down on the table with every ounce of strength I had. The crystal shattered spectacularly, wine and glass shards exploding across the white tablecloth. The entire room went silent. "You're right, Victoria." My voice came out steady cold, nothing like the emotional wreck they expected. "I'm nothing like you." I reached into my bag and pulled out the manila folder I had brought. I threw it down the length of the table. It slid across the polished wood, scattering bank statements and receipts coming to rest directly in front of my father, my mother, and my grandfather. Because unlike you, I don't steal $500,000 from a children's charity to fund my shopping addiction and pay off my married boyfriend's gambling debts. Victoria's face went white. "You have no idea what you're talking about. Don't I Bank of America account ending in 4739 opened under a shell corporation called VLS Holdings. Your initials, by the way. Not very creative." Monthly withdrawals ranging from $15,000 to $40,000 over the past 18 months. Wire transfers to the Borgata Casino in Atlantic City. Receipts from Bergdorf Goodman Cartier and that lovely penthouse apartment you've been keeping secret in Tribeca. My father was frantically flipping through the documents. My mother's hand had flown to her throat. The investors looked like they wanted to disappear into the wallpaper. Victoria's composure cracked. "You little bitch, you went through my private records." "Your private theft, you mean? That money was supposed to help kids get scholarships, Victoria. Kids who have nothing, and you spent it on handbags." She came at me then, her hand raised to slap me. But I was ready. I caught her wrist mid-air and pushed her back hard. She stumbled in her heels, falling back into her chair with a graceless thump. "Don't ever touch me again." My grandfather's voice cut through the chaos like a knife. "Sit down, all of you." We obeyed. Even in the middle of this explosion, his authority was absolute. He stood slowly, his age, evident in every movement, but his presence filled the room. He picked up the documents I had provided, flipping through them with methodical precision. Then he looked at Victoria. "Do you know what I hate most in this world?" His voice was quiet but terrible. Thieves who steal from children, liars who smile while they destroy trust, fools who think I'm too old to know what happens in my own company. "Grandfather, I can explain." Victoria's voice had gone small. "You're right about one thing, Victoria. Someone at this table doesn't deserve the sterling name." He paused, letting the moment stretch. "It's you." Victoria's face crumpled. No, you don't understand. Ellie is lying. She's always been jealous of me. I had you investigated 6 months ago." My grandfather's words landed like bombs. "I've had private investigators documenting every withdrawal, every purchase, every lie. I wanted to see if you would come clean on your own. You didn't." He turned to my parents. "And you two, so blinded by her charisma and so quick to dismiss Ellie that you never noticed your golden child was a thief. You enabled this, you created this." My father tried to stand. "Father, we had no idea." "Sit down." The command cracked like a whip. My father sat. My grandfather walked slowly around the table until he stood behind my chair. He placed one weathered hand on my shoulder. "Effective immediately. Victoria, you are terminated from all positions within Sterling Industries. Your trust fund is frozen pending full restitution of the stolen funds. If you fail to repay every cent within 90 days, I will press criminal charges." Am I understood? Victoria was crying now, ugly tears ruining her makeup. "You can't do this. I'm your granddaughter." "So is Ellie. The difference is she has integrity." He moved back to his seat, but he wasn't finished. "As for you two," he addressed my parents, "your management of family assets is hereby suspended. You've proven yourselves incapable of sound judgment. Your own personal accounts will remain accessible, but you will have no further say in trust distributions or business decisions." My mother gasped. "That's not fair." "What's not fair is treating one daughter like a princess and the other like a servant. What's not fair is standing by while cruelty happens under your roof. You should be ashamed." He looked around at the stunned investors. "Gentlemen, ladies, I apologize for this unpleasant dinner entertainment. I trust you'll keep these family matters confidential. My lawyers will be in touch regarding the Castellano account and other business matters. Ellie has been managing them brilliantly, by the way. Perhaps we can schedule a proper meeting in the new year." Then he turned to me. "Ellie, please see me in my study when dinner concludes. We have much to discuss about your new role as Director of Operations and Primary Trustee of the Sterling Foundation." The room erupted. Victoria was screaming. My mother was crying, my father was trying to argue with my grandfather, and the investors were making hasty excuses to leave. I sat in the eye of the hurricane perfectly still, watching my old life implode. After what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, security arrived. My grandfather had called them before dinner, apparently anticipating this outcome. They escorted Victoria out, still screaming threats and accusations. She grabbed at my grandfather's sleeve as they pulled her past, begging, but he simply turned away. The last I saw of her that night was through the front window. They left her outside the gates in the falling snow. Her designer dress soaked her makeup, ruined all her false glamour, stripped away. She looked small out there, powerless, exactly how she had made me feel for so many years. My parents retreated to their wing of the house without another word to me. The investors fled into the night. The house staff cleaned up the destroyed dining room in silence. And I walked down the long hallway to my grandfather's study, my heels clicking on marble floors, feeling like I was moving through a dream. He was waiting by the fireplace, 2 glasses of bourbon already poured. He handed me one and gestured to the chair across from him. "You waited a long time to fight back," he said simply. "You told me to be patient, to observe. I did. And you learned well." He studied me over his glass. "You could have come to me months ago with this evidence. Why didn't you?" "Because I needed to be sure. I needed to have every detail perfect. And I needed to reach my breaking point." I took a sip of bourbon, feeling it burn down my throat. If I had come to you before I was ready, I might have felt guilty. I might have backed down when Victoria cried, or when Mom played the family unity card. But now, after tonight, I don't feel guilty at all. He smiled, a rare expression that transformed his austere face. "That's my girl. You have steel in you, Ellie. Real strength, not the performative kind your sister mistakes for power. The company needs that. I need that." "What happens now?" "Now you step into the role you should have had from the beginning. Director of Operations means you'll oversee the day-to-day running of all Sterling Enterprises. It's a demanding position. You'll work directly with me and the board. No more hiding in the background doing the work while others take credit. And the foundation, yours to rebuild. The theft damaged our reputation. You'll need to be transparent about what happened, make full restitution to the programs we shortchanged, and establish new oversight protocols. It won't be easy." "I'm not afraid of hard work." "No, you never were." He set down his glass and leaned forward. "Your sister and your parents will fight this. They'll contest the trust changes. They'll try to turn other family members against you. They'll make your life difficult in every way they can imagine. Let them try." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, the fire crackling, the snow falling outside the windows. Finally, I asked the question that had been nagging at me as, "How long have you known about Victoria, about how they treated me, all of it?" "Since you were children." His voice was heavy with old regret. "I watched your mother favor Victoria from birth. The prettier one, the charming one. I watched your father overlook you because you reminded him too much of himself, all the parts he didn't like. And I watched you grow quiet and competent and invisible. Why didn't you stop it? Because you can't force people to love equally. You can't make parents see what they don't want to see. But I could wait and watch and make sure that when the truth finally came out, you would be protected." He met my eyes. "I'm an old man, Ellie. I won't be here forever. I needed to know you were strong enough to survive this family. Tonight, you proved you are." I left the estate 2 hours later after going over preliminary plans for the business transition. I walked out the front door this time, not the servants' entrance. I got into my beat-up Honda Civic, the same car Victoria had mocked, and I sat there for a moment looking up at that massive stone house. Lights glowed in scattered windows. Somewhere inside, my mother was probably consoling my father. Victoria was gone, thrown out into the night. My grandfather was alone in his study drinking bourbon, and reading through quarterly reports like this had been just another business dinner, and I was free. I started the engine and drove away, and with every mile between me and that house, I felt lighter. The snow had stopped, and stars were breaking through the clouds. My phone buzzed constantly with messages I ignored. There would be time enough tomorrow to deal with angry family members, to start the legal processes, to step into my new role. Tonight I just drove. I ended up at an all-night diner in Queens, eating pancakes at 3 in the morning, watching early Christmas morning arrive through grease-stained windows. A tired waitress refilled my coffee without asking. A homeless man slept in a corner booth, and the manager didn't wake him. These were my people, I realized. Not the crystal and champagne crowd, not the ones who measured worth by designer labels and trust fund sizes. Real people who worked hard and treated each other with basic decency. My phone rang. I almost ignored it, but I saw my grandfather's name on the screen. "Hello? Just wanted to make sure you made it home safely." His voice was gruff with exhaustion. "I'm at a diner, eating pancakes." "Good, that's good." A pause. "I'm proud of you, Ellie." My eyes stung with sudden tears. "Thank you, grandfather, for everything." "Don't thank me yet. Tomorrow the real work begins. Get some rest." He hung up, and I finished my pancakes, paid my bill with a generous tip, and drove to my apartment as the sun started to rise on Christmas morning. My little apartment had never looked better. No marble floors, no priceless artwork, no history weighing down every corner. Just my space, my things, my life that I had built entirely on my own merit. I made tea and stood at my window, watching the neighborhood wake up. Kids were probably opening presents. Families were gathering for breakfast. Normal people living normal lives. I had spent so long wanting to be accepted by my family, wanting to be seen and valued and loved. I had sacrificed my dignity, my credit for my work, my self-respect, all for the approval of people who would never give it. But standing there in my small apartment with my cheap tea and my freedom, I realized something important. I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need their love. I had something more valuable than either of those things. I had myself back. The next few months were brutal. Victoria hired lawyers and tried to contest the trust changes. My mother called weekly to guilt-trip me about destroying the family. My father sent formal letters through his attorney. Extended family members took sides, most of them siding with Victoria because her version of events was more comfortable than the truth. I documented everything. I worked 18-hour days rebuilding the foundation's reputation. I gave interviews to charity watchdog organizations, being completely transparent about the theft and our restitution efforts. I personally met with every program director whose funding had been cut because of Victoria's stealing, and I promised to make them whole. The business world watched carefully. Some competitors saw blood in the water and circled, but others, the ones who valued integrity, saw what I was doing and respected it. New partnerships formed. Old alliances strengthened. My grandfather and I worked side by side, and I learned more in those months than I had in years of hiding in the shadows. Victoria's boyfriend divorced his wife, for her then left her when the money dried up. She got a job at a competitor's firm, but her reputation followed her. Last I heard, she was working in their Atlanta office, as far from New York society as she could get, while still pretending to have a career. My parents eventually stopped fighting, but they never apologized. We exist in a state of cold civility now. I see them at mandatory family functions. We exchange pleasantries. They ask about the business. But the warmth, the connection, whatever twisted version of family love we once had, it's gone. I mourn that sometimes late at night, when I'm alone. But mostly, I'm relieved. 6 months after that Christmas dinner, my grandfather called me into his study again. He looked older, more tired, but his eyes were still sharp. "I'm announcing my retirement next month. Officially, at least. I'll remain as chairman emeritus, but the day-to-day operations are yours." He slid a folder across the desk. "These are the papers naming you CEO of Sterling Industries." I stared at the folder like it might bite me. "Grandfather, I'm 27. The board will never accept this." "The board will accept what I tell them to accept. Besides, you've earned this. You've proven yourself over and over again. It's time to stop questioning whether you deserve success and start embracing it." So I did. I became CEO of Sterling Industries at 27 years old, one of the youngest people to ever hold that position in the company's 100-year history. The announcement made waves. Business publications ran profiles. Some were skeptical, some were impressed. All were watching to see if I would fail. I didn't fail. I won't lie and say everything is perfect now. Running a major corporation is exhausting and stressful, and sometimes I still hear Victoria's voice in my head telling me I'm not good enough. Sometimes I wake up at 3 in the morning, convinced I've made a terrible decision. Sometimes I miss having a mother I could call when things get hard. But I also have something I never had before. I have people who respect me because I've earned it. I have accomplishments that are truly mine. I have the ability to make real change, to fund programs that help people to build something meaningful. And most importantly, I have my self-respect back. Looking back at that Christmas Eve dinner, at the moment I slammed that wine glass down and refused to be diminished anymore, I realized it wasn't just about standing up to Victoria or exposing her crimes. It was about refusing to participate in my own erasure. It was about deciding that being liked by people who didn't value me was less important than valuing myself. Was it worth it? Losing my family such as they were, burning those bridges so completely that there's no going back? Yes, 1,000 times yes. Because I learned something crucial that night. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot love people who treat you like garbage and expect them to suddenly treasure you. You cannot sacrifice yourself on the altar of someone else's ego and expect them to appreciate the offering. They will just keep taking until there's nothing left of you. Some bridges deserve to burn. Some families are too toxic to salvage. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away from people who will never see your worth and build a life with people who do. So here's my question for you. Have you been sacrificing yourself for people who don't appreciate you? Have you been swallowing your voice to keep the peace? Are you lighting yourself on fire to keep someone else warm? What would it take for you to slam that glass down on the table and say enough? Think about it. And if this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own life and relationships, hit that like button, subscribe. For more stories about finding your strength, and leave a comment telling me about a time you stood up for yourself. I read every single one, and your stories inspire me just as much as I hope mine inspires you. Remember, you deserve to be in rooms where you're valued, doing work that matters, surrounded by people who see you. Don't settle for less. Don't let anyone convince you that you're asking for too much when you're really just asking for basic human dignity. You are not too sensitive. You are not too demanding. You are not the problem. The people who treat you like you are, they're the problem. And you don't owe them another second of your precious life.